Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian and RockFish Games just announced Everspace 2, the sequel to the rather great space shooter that launched in 2017. Now, where the original Everspace is a roguelike shooter, RockFish are rethinking the approach here and making Everspace 2 a complete free-roaming open-world game. And just as with the original, Everspace 2 will be a single-player title. Right at the moment, we don't have a huge amount of details on the game. However, we do have the announcement trailer. You can see that playing right here, and the link to the trailer is available in the video description. Now, it does give a few hints and tips of what we can perhaps expect, and the ability to fly free roam across space, as we saw just there, seems at least that it may certainly be a part of the game. We can also see that it follows in the footsteps of the original with the visuals, and graphically it really does look spectacular. Now, if you're wondering when this is coming out, it's going into early access in 2020 with a full release for 2021. And that does seem a little bit odd initially. Why announce the game so early? It would seem that there's two reasons that come to mind for this. The first is that RockFish Games are no strangers to early access. They released the original into early access and they had a very good run through that process with a lot of major updates during that particular time and of course a lot of bug fixes and just about everything else. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that RockFish really did use the early access process as it should be intended to be used. That is to say, to get the game running in an optimal form. And just before we go on to the next step here, I just want to mention another part from this trailer, which looks like the ability to fly over planets. Now, I don't know if there'll be atmospheric entry here, whether we're about to actually fly down to the planets, or whether we just somehow teleport onto the planets or whatever, but the ability to fly over planetary surfaces is going to be a nice change of environment for the game, and no doubt about that. Now, the other reason for the early announcement of this particular game likely would be a Kickstarter. Gaming website PC Games N reports that RockFish will be taking Everspace 2 to Kickstarter with a funding target of €450,000. The developers say they'd use this money to ensure they have full creative control over the title, and if they can achieve some stretch goals during the campaign, they'd potentially like to expand the scope of the game as well. Now, I suspect that one of the big questions is what type of space game will Everspace 2 actually be? Well, apparently it's going to stay true to its roots. It's going to firmly remain a space shooter, but it's also going to be quite a bit of a looter as well, or a loot and shooter, I guess you could class it as. The game world will be persistent, even though it is single player, which means you will have freedom to go where you want, when you want, and you will grow your ship or grow your character with RPG-like elements over time. RockFish also state that the game will have a far greater selection of ships than the original title, which is no doubt going to be a good thing. Now, if you've never tried out Everspace, I do have a whole bunch of videos on that game. In fact, I'd go as far to say that it's one of my favourite, if not my favourite, space-based combat shooter. Whilst it's firmly, without doubt, an arcade title, it's not really a simulation of space, definitely an arcade title, it's definitely in very, very good hands and handles combat very well. Now, the trailer, as well as all the screenshots that are available, shows the game from a third-person perspective, but if the first title is anything to go on, there should also be a first-person perspective available where you can sit inside the cockpit. Although, personally speaking, my personal preference is the third-person perspective at any rate. So, single-player space games seem to be very much in vogue at the moment, with Rebel Galaxy Outlaw releasing this week, or last week rather, and Everspace 2 on the cards for a release further down the line, and of course there's a sequel to Starpoint Gemini, which hopefully isn't too far away. Now, I guess there's going to be a bit of disappointment out there that Everspace 2 at least isn't going to be a multiplayer title. But is that something we really need? After all, space games found their roots in single player, and I really do like the idea of having more titles out there that fit that particular category. And I guess there's the fact that multiplayer titles are generally speaking more costly to produce, as well as overall far more difficult. So the final bit of information we have here then is that Everspace 2 will be launching on PlayStation 4, PC as well as Xbox. I noticed that a number of people asked RockFish whether or not it will launch on Switch, to which the developers responded, "Don't get your hopes up." So I guess that's not a particularly good sign to getting Everspace 2 onto the portable console. At any rate, I'm looking forward to seeing more details on this title, and I suspect the next time we'll hear anything major is when the Kickstarter project launches. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Everspace 2, do let me know in the comments section below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.